4. I could not get away from this as I kind of progressed from Sunday and through the process of teaching. Over a week ago, in here on a Wednesday night, and through the leadership process that God was taking one of his servants in the Old Testament, Joshua, through. And I started thinking about this, and as I had the opportunity in preparing for this first Wednesday, I couldn't get away from this theme in my heart as we're working through Nehemiah on Sundays and walking through the process of this. I'm just really walking through it, journeying through it, and asking, Lord, as you're feeding me, what can I feed to someone else? And so tonight, there's some things that I'm going to give you to jump into where we're going to end. But in Nehemiah chapter 4, find your place there, and we're going to read in just a little bit, starting in verse 17, and going to finish in verse 20. And so you can hold your spot there. You can follow along on the screens with us in a little bit. But this is all for free in the beginning to get to where we're going to land. All right? Critical people, I want you to remember this. If you're keeping notes, I want you to write it down. Critical people are a part of the process. I can tell you this, that when you are doing something that matters, you will be criticized. You will be criticized, and you would think that it would seem unfair that you would begin to receive criticism for something that you were doing right. Now, we understand when we're criticized for something that makes no sense and we're doing it wrong and it's selfish and it's manipulative. We understand criticism can come at that expense. But when you're trying to do the right thing, when you're trying to rebuild a city, rebuild a wall, when you're trying to gain strength and develop it and give strength back to something, why would you be criticized? Why would you be criticized? But I can tell you that critical people are part of the process, that you are who you are, and the betterment of who you are because of what Christ has done comes because people have criticized you and you have learned from those moments. I think that criticism is necessary and it's part of the process. Why do I say that? Because when I look through the Word, I see moments that criticism brought a victory in an individual's life. For example, Aaron and Miriam criticized Moses for his marriage to an Ethiopian woman. There was a criticism there. What did Moses do wrong? Absolutely nothing. But there was criticism there. They learned a lesson. They were struck with leprosy. But it made Moses a better leader. People criticized Paul for being a bad speaker. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 10, these people are criticizing Paul's speaking ability. And Paul is responsible for writing 2/3 of the New Testament, of which we gain our doctrine, our theology. So this is kind of important. But he was a bad preacher. It just lets you know that really it's just the opinion of an individual or a group of them. Did Paul quit doing what he was doing because he was criticized, that they thought he wasn't a great communicator? No, he kept on pushing through. Why? Because his purpose was higher than the criticism of the people around him. The Pharisees, they criticized Jesus for eating with sinners and healing on the Sabbath. But that was why he came. It was their purpose that brought about the criticism in their life that made them stronger. There will be times that you will receive criticism and it will be good. So I want to tell you this, don't ever ignore the value of constructive criticism. When someone will tell you something that can change part of your life. Now, none of us like being told what to do. Maybe you raise your hand like, I love it when somebody tells me what to do. Probably no one. But there are times that there's constructive criticism and it may hurt, but it's needed. I think we experience this in marriage. I think we experience it in parenting. I think we experience it in Have you ever gotten on to your children and they went, please correct me, it feels so good? No, they normally respond a little bit negative. They don't always do exactly what you've told them when you've told them to do it. When I told the kid, if I were to ask any of these teenagers in the room tonight and I said, how many of you loved it the last time your parents told you needed to change this? Oh, that's me. No one does. But how many of you know that when parents love their children, they're going to discipline who they love, just like Jesus disciplines us? And there are times that Jesus constructively criticizes an area of our life and says, you need to work this out. That's called conviction. There's times where it can be very profitable. But then there are times that criticism is completely unjust. And there will be times in the unjust criticism of your life that we may have, that we will receive it, that we may have to respond. We may have to speak to it. For example, in Judges chapter 8, Gideon is called out and he's leading a charge, and these individuals ask Gideon, why have you treated us like this? They're critical of what he's done. And it says in the word, it says they criticized him sharply. And in verse 2, he says, but he answered them. It says, when the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, they were no longer angry. Sometimes people will criticize you unjustly because they don't understand what you're doing, and all you have to do is open up your mouth and respond. Just tell them why. Tell them the why behind the what. Why? Because we're not all 2 years old and we don't get to say, because I said so. You respond to it. You give an answer. You give a response to it. There will be times that we have to do that. There will be other times that we have to dismiss it. In another part, in the New Testament, in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 23, it says, when they hurled their insults at Jesus, he did not retaliate. And when he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to who judges justly. There will be times when you can't respond to it because it deserves no response. There will be times that some of the things that are said about you are so untrue and so false that it doesn't deserve a response. You tracking what I'm saying? There will be times where things are said about you that are so untrue, you just have to dismiss it. Why? Because you are committed to the cause of which has called you out of the darkness you were in and into the light of which you are following, and you can't respond to it. You can't. There will be a moment where you may be able to respond to some criticism, but there will be other times where you just need to dismiss it completely because there is no winning. But I can tell you this, whether you respond or whether you dismiss, I know that it's God's will that we never become it. That we never become the ones so critical in nature that we can't learn and we can't grow and we tear down everybody else who is trying. When I walk through Nehemiah, I see a people that have been inspired to do an incredible task, and I really relate it to the power of the church. And we were going to show a video tonight of the Google reviews that people do on churches. Can I tell you as a pastor, I don't pay as much attention to the 5 stars as I do the 1 stars. That's not because I don't value the 5s, but I don't know why somebody would give a 1 star. I mean, we had air conditioner. You know what I'm saying? We had jambalaya. I mean, that's 4 stars. You know what I'm saying? And people will give these reviews that people will do things that become critical when truthfully what you're trying to do is build something that will make a difference. The difference between being defeated and being defended. And it is a process that is extremely difficult. And in the process of which we've read, if you've been here on Sundays or following online, you see that Nehemiah receives this call and he answers the call, this burden, and he weeps and he prays and he acts righteously and he moves in a direction. And he begins to build this wall after he's done his planning, his homework, moves out. He receives the approval and the protection from the governors on the way so that he wouldn't be attacked and killed. But he also received approval to be able to receive supplies. So he goes in and he has protection and he has equipment. But now as he's building the wall, these enemies that have kept this city beaten down, Judah, the capital city of Jerusalem, as this has happened, now these enemies are coming back and they are very critical of what is happening. Why? Because they don't want them to become a strong people again because they are God's people. Just like you are not going to have people that are going to encourage you all the time from the cheap seats to do the right thing because they love you when you're broken and when you're miserable because you're just like them. Misery loves company so much that it will go to the highest extents and the lowest depths to be able to bring about whatever function needs to happen so that you will be a miserable individual and repeat the cycle that they repeatedly live in. That you just see, they want you to stay miserable. They want you to be unhappy. See, I told you they would do that. See, that it's so much easier now in the season of life and the season that the church is in, not just here but around America, that it's so much easier to believe a lie than it is the truth. That whenever we hear something that could possibly be sketchy, that we just buy into it instead of going, that doesn't sound right. Remember the old saying that says, believe nothing you hear and half of what you see. There's three sides to every story. But sometimes people are so miserable, they would rather grab onto a bunch of garbage and live in that moment and live in that season instead of want to climb above it and live above reproach. It's life. And the enemy will do that. The enemy will do that. He will hurl insults at you, and he will tear down everything that you put your hand to, and he will ridicule you as an individual, and then he will ridicule what you're doing. In this wall, here's what's happening. They built it halfway. Before I read this text, they built the wall halfway, and Sanballat and Tobiah are two individuals that are noted here. And Sanballat is ridiculing them as a weak people, and then Tobiah says that what they are building is so weak, they built it halfway. Have you ever begun to build something that it was everything you could do to get a foundation right, and when the foundation was right, it became hard to stack a brick on top of the next one because it was difficult, because in the beginning it's always hard. But once you get to a certain level, it becomes a little easier because you've learned the process and you're beginning to gain some momentum. And what the enemy would love to do is to distract you so that you would not have an opportunity to become as strong as you should be, because you listened from the outside opinion and you believed a lie when it would have been better for you to stick with the truth. God had called Nehemiah to rebuild this wall, and he inspired the hearts of the people. So what is the enemy's job to do? The enemy's job is to discredit Nehemiah, discredit the people building the wall, and to strike fear in the ones who are watching. There's somebody always watching how you're building this wall. What does the wall represent? To us as an individual in the New Testament times, I believe with all of my heart that God has set us as a city on a hill to be watched. Yes, as a church, but also as an individual. And God has called each one of us who claim to know Jesus to be a city that is on a hill, who we put up a wall not to keep people out, but that we can defend ourselves against the enemy in the right way. But we begin in the very start of our journey with Christ. We're building this and we're learning how to fight against the enemy. Why? Because for all of our lives, we've been going with him. And now that we turn the opposite direction, it's a fight. And people will criticize how you build it. See, the enemy isn't going to get their hands dirty with the calling on your life, and they're not going to build the wall, but they'll sure talk trash about what you're doing. Man, they're not going to be strong enough to stand on their own. Yeah, you know what? I went to church like them too, and they'll be back. There'll always be critics like that. But then what you see that turns the beginning of chapter 4 is then on the inside, the people became discouraged. Why did they become discouraged? Because you can hear. Well, I don't hear criticism. No, you'll hear it. It's just your choice of whether you're going to ignore it or not. And you begin to hear it, and as you're working, your fingers to the bone, laying everything you got, your blood, your sweat, your tears, every emotion that you have, just to stand and to be counted, and then to be torn down and to look like you're not making much of a difference and you're only halfway, and they're saying it's so weak. And would there ever be a doubt if there wasn't a critic to be able to sow it? They're there so that we question the process, that we can learn and we can gain momentum to keep on going, because we're not going to let them rob us of an opportunity God's given us. And there becomes this moment where Nehemiah has to say to them, it's our job. It's what we do. So tonight is a challenge. We get to walk out of here, out of this word where he says to them in chapter 4 and verse 17, he says, those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked on construction and with the other hand they held a weapon. Every one of the builders had his sword girded at his side as he built, and the one who sounded the trumpet was beside me. You're going to have a trumpet player. You're going to have to have the conviction of the Holy Spirit to sound a trumpet so you know where to fight at. Then I said to the nobles, the rulers, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. And wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. Can I tell you that some of the greatest opportunities in victory come when you hear the trumpet and you show up to the fight? You just show up and be available, and God's going to bring the victory because he's already promised it. So the faithfulness of hearing the trumpet and showing up, the victory is coming. Why? Because God said build the wall. God wanted the wall rebuilt. So if God wanted that wall rebuilt and he put it on the heart of a man, a leader, to inspire thousands of people to help, then wouldn't it just seem like it was a natural thing that the enemy would begin to speak doubt into those people? And then that doubt would become diabolical, and those individuals become to doubt themselves. They looked and they said, there's so much rubble, there's so much trouble. The word comes back to Nehemiah, says they're losing their strength, and that's why he said to them, the work is great and extensive. We're separated. Wherever you hear, our God will fight for us. Guys, it's a battle. What we're in is a battle. You can put lights and fog machines and pretty music around it, but I'm telling you right now, it's a war. It is not entertainment. Worship is warfare. This lifestyle is warfare against an enemy who would love to destroy us. And if you don't think I know what I'm talking about, then all you have to do is look in society. It's not just an adult issue, it's a teenage issue and a child issue. Why? Because the enemy is not particular on who he destroys. He has no prejudice. He wants to kill everybody. He's attacking the rich, the poor, the black, the white, the brown. It doesn't matter where you lived, who your mama and your daddy was, how much money you had or you didn't have. He wants to tear your city down and keep you in embarrassment, because that's what he does. It's what he does. He wants to make you a mockery. And for every brick that you lay, he's going to talk trash about the way you laid it and how it's not good enough. And he's going to make you look outward instead of keeping your focus on what he said to do. Let me tell you, tonight, God has said, build your wall. Build your wall. What am I saying? Nehemiah wasn't called to build a wall in Persia. He wasn't called to build a wall in Samaria. He was called to build the wall in Judah. And when you build your wall, you will receive the empowerment that you need. And when God calls you, he calls you. He didn't call you to be me. He called you to be you. And he called you to follow him. What I mean is this: be an original. Be an original. You are so unique and powerful in who God has called you to be. Whether you're an adult or a teenager, you are unique for a purpose. Why don't you let that uniqueness drive you to do great things instead of become a common failure with the things in life that can destroy you? Build your wall. If you don't build your wall, you're going to spend so much time criticizing somebody else for the wall they built. Mad about the wall you don't have. But listen to me. You can't build your wall the exact same way somebody else built theirs. He said, when he said, I want to build a wall, he said that to the king of Persia. God sent him, anointed him. Were there any other cities in the day that Nehemiah lived that needed their wall rebuilt? You better believe it. But he didn't call him to rebuild that city wall. He called him to rebuild the wall that was around Judah. It has to be personal for you. It has to be personal for me. Can I tell you that for as many people that pray for me and love me, they can't build the wall for me. I have to work out my own salvation with fear and trembling. Do I learn from the example? Absolutely. But I may not be gifted in the same way to build like they built. Because God doesn't want us to just become a copycat in a way that there's never any uniqueness to what we do. What I mean is this. We can't limit ourselves by the limitations of another individual, by another human. Because we serve an unlimited God. In this battle as we build, we understand the concept that yes, we can resource and we can learn, but at the end of the day, we're not hanging on to somebody else, we're hanging on to Jesus. And he is unlimited in creativity. And so many times we sell ourselves short by copying what somebody else did instead of being genuine enough to get a word from God for ourselves, a calling for God for ourselves, and go after him who's the most creative thing that's ever happened on the face of this universe, and he'll empower us as individuals to have influence that maybe somebody else wasn't allowed because he was waiting on us. They built their wall. Let's stop being a copycat, get our hands dirty, and build what God's called us to build. Oh, well, that sounds good for grown-ups, yeah. Maybe so. But the things that we learn as teenagers and as children pour into the lives of us as adults, and our insecurities are formed, and the things that we struggle with only become bigger, and we only mask them better because we make more money than we did when we were 11, 12, and 13. I used to say as a youth pastor that teenagers are just, or when I made the transition to pastoring, I said pastoring is a lot like youth pastoring, except they got enough money. They got enough money to say no and don't care what anybody else says because they're going to do what they want. You tell them they got their own car, they'll leave your group. It is what it is. You put them out there on a trip, it can be a challenge. In being an original, you learn to be authentic. When you learn to copy, you can put on a mask and look like you're doing the right thing, but your wall is very weak. It doesn't mean that you can't use the same kind of brick. There's nothing new to this thing when it comes to the gospel. We're using doctrine that is not new. We're not trying to create a new doctrine. What I'm trying to tell for us tonight is that we have to put our hands to work and say, I saw what they did. I think that's good. But Lord, I don't want to become dependent on somebody else's idea. I want to make sure that it's your idea for what you want me to do. You're like, well, that means that maybe he doesn't want me to build a wall. No, he wants you to build a wall. It's going to be a wall at the end, and that's going to prove that what God spoke to you is valid. The second thing that I want you to kind of see tonight that I felt like the Lord spoke to me through this scripture is that you may feel lonely, but you will never be alone. Some of the loneliest moments that you have will be when you're sitting on a wall trying to build something that matters. You feel like nobody else cares, and nobody else knows. He said they were spread out. What the word says, they said they were spread out so far from one another on the wall. It was a big job. And when you're spread out, it's hard to see what everybody else is doing. And when you begin to work hard, you may think that you're the only one working. You may think that you're the only one giving 100%. Can I just encourage us tonight and just say, don't flatter yourself. You ain't the only one working. There's a lot of people working hard. And there may be some that are slacking, but we're not going to worry about slackers. We're going to focus on what God's called us to do. Like, I feel lonely. I feel like nobody's encouraging me. Look, I'm thankful for encouragement. But I'm not living for the affirmation of another man. And I know that sounds mean, but for most of my life, I lived on the basis of approval of other people. And now I just want to please God. And I believe if I please God, I'll learn how to win the approval of people, because he wants me to build a wall that's worth repeating so that we can defend a city against the enemy that's trying to destroy. And when you're building, it's a lonely feeling because your spouse can't build your wall, and you can't build theirs. Your best friend can't build, you got to build it. And there'll be times you feel lonely, but I can promise you may feel lonely, but his word says we'll never be alone. And there's no enemy that can overcome you when you are assigned to the purpose of what he has for you to do. Because when the enemy becomes to attack you, the trumpet will sound. And guess what you got to do? All you got to do is turn around and fight and watch God bring the victory. That's it. That is all we have to do. So from adults to teenagers, I was watching today, and I was sitting in my truck, and I had to pick my kids up because April said she wasn't going to be able to do it today. Right last minute, had something else come up, so I blitz out of here, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching, and I got to thinking about what is the pressure that a teenager walks through in life today, that if they try to stand righteous and they try to stand for purity, what is all the criticism that's going to be said about them? And there are so many times in life that we don't like feeling lonely, that we will sacrifice what God has called us to do just so we'll be accepted. But can I tell you, you may feel lonely, but you'll never be alone. You may feel like your family has turned their back on you. It's not that it's okay that they did, it hurts. But I can tell you this, God has never left you, never forsaken you, and He will not hang you out to dry to be a failure, because He is a God that knows what He's doing, and He puts you back together, restores you, and redeems you, and gives you the empowerment and the ability to build a wall. So what do we have to do? Don't give up just because it gets hard. Don't give up just because we get lonely. Don't give up. It drives me crazy when somebody says, well, I don't want the church to get too big. Does that mean we want to tell everybody else that they can burn in hell? Well, if a church gets too big, I may not know everybody. Well, okay. Then when we say go shake a hand, go shake their hand and meet them. It's always been, I just miss small church. When you ain't going to like heaven. You ain't going to like heaven. Because Jesus is willing that none should perish. And you need to get plugged into a church that is serious about winning the lost and building the wall, instead of just trying to play patty cake and please a few opinionated people, because we got a job to do. And we may feel lonely when we do it, but God's with us. And if God is for us, He's more than any critic can be against us. And it doesn't matter who jumps off. We got to focus on who will hear the sound of the trumpet, turn around and watch God bring the victory. Because critics are going to be plenty, but there will be very few that will pay the price to see the wall built. If you focus on your calling, you will not have time to worry with nonsense. Now, my daddy wasn't a biblical man at all. He knew enough of the Bible to send every one of us to hell. And I'd love to say that most of my mom's side of the family had a country music theology. Well, you know, the Bible says if you know when to hold them and know when to fold them, you'll know when to walk away. After I went to Bible college, I had to go talk to them because I was like, I never found it. And my survey, my professor for the Old Testament survey, and then my professor for the New Testament survey said, y'all didn't know what you was talking about. He said it, I didn't. I just couldn't find it, so I asked him. And then I asked him, I said, well, you don't have to, you just have to love them. You don't have to like them. That wasn't in there either. I don't care what Leanne Womack sang about. If you focus on your calling, you will not have time to worry about the nonsense. And my dad, who was an unbiblical man, said it this way. He says, if you will take care of your business, you don't have time to be in everybody else's. What are they doing? How are they doing it? What do they say? How do they say it? Can I tell you, the enemy loves to distract your pastor a ton. There are times that in building this wall that critics speak. But here's what I know is the enemy's not selective. He wants to destroy you as well. He wants to mess you up, tear you down, tell you you're not good enough. It's nothing new. You'll always be an addict. You'll always be a failure. You'll always be this. You'll always be whatever title that's negative that you want to attach to your name. You'll always be an orphan. You'll always be adopted. You'll always be. No, you don't have to be. Because when you come to Christ and you surrender yourself 100% to Him, you can always be His child. And when you're His child walking in His calling for your life, you'll stop living with a small mentality and tripping up in the same junk over and over of criticism and low life living and settling for less than God's best. And we got a wall to build. And when we build this wall, the enemy won't so easily penetrate what God has built. But if we simply do it in our own strength, it'll fall easily. So tonight, in my challenge, and what I couldn't get away from through this scripture is, guys, we got to work. And we got to fight. And all those feelings that come between working and fighting, the loneliness, the unfairness, the criticism that comes from the inside and the outside, we got to put it all on the shelf. Throw it out. Stay busy doing what God's called us to do. and keep a weapon ready for when the enemy tries to sneak up on our six, when he tries to sneak up on our back. We hear the trumpet, we just turn around, use what God's given us to use, and we watch him give us the victory. Stand with me tonight. We ended Nehemiah this week, and as we're going through it and was talking through the last week, I could not just do another First Wednesday without walking through that. And tonight I hope that you are able to leave here going, I've got to engage in what God has called me to do. I've got to build this wall and stop being drugged down by stupidity and low standards. And building a wall is a high standard. It's a lot of work. And there's plenty of lazy people to keep you lazy. Keep pushing through. Keep pushing through. Every head bowed, every eye closed. I want to pray over you. We're not going to call anybody up tonight. But tonight, I just want, as your heads are bowed and your eyes are closed, I just want to tell you that tonight, if you will pick up a tool and you'll pick up a weapon, meaning that you surrender everything to Jesus Christ, you can build this wall. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't stop short. Don't be a fake. Be an authentic. Don't be a copycat. Be an original. Yes, receive from people that are valid, but you're not trying to be them. You're trying to be like Jesus. You can use their example